On Tobago Updates viewers. It's a wonderful day here in Tobago, and it's great to be joining you this morning. And getting into our show for today, we are going to be joined for the whole entire show by the Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries, and Urban Development, and of course, that's none other than Mr. Trevor James. So, good morning and welcome to you.
Good morning, Kandace. Good morning, Tobago, to your viewers in Trinidad and around the world. Pleasant good morning.
And viewers, I promise you this morning that we did not coordinate our outfits beforehand. This is all coincidence. But yeah, we are here this morning to speak about the developments that's happening with the Scarborough redevelopment project. Now, a report has been made to the public. So if you haven't been able to see or hear anything about what's been going on or the latest developments, it's there for you. So, Mr. James, can you just give us, like, in a nutshell, just what is it? What came out of the reports?
Well, just to go back to remind the public of the history of the project, we went to the public, we came to the public in lead up to the 2021 January election, presenting a new vision for Scarborough that would hopefully rebuild an economy in Tobago and begin the transformation of Tobago. We again represented it in the December election. We came into office late December. The chief sec and the executive council accepted the mandate of the PDP then as government policy in Tobago, which meant that the administration accepted the redevelopment of Scarborough as in fact government policy. This has been in the media for a long time. Subsequent to that, we engaged Geometrics, architectural company, with a series of consultants to undertake a feasibility study. We engaged the public through three, what I may think is massive consultations, probably never seen in Tobago or Trinidad and Tobago. Out of that, the consultants came back with the final feasibility report, which took into consideration issues raised in the first consultation. Remember that they used our concept design then as the genesis for their design. So they looked at the bay, the wave current movements in the bay, the traffic situation, the economics of bringing crews and increased cruise passengers to Tobago. And we are satisfied that the report captures what we believe is the vision for Scarborough and took into consideration the concerns of the public, which caused a change in the concept design that we presented. And we hope that when the public downloads it and reads it, we want to estimate, given a month's time, later this month, we'll come back to the public with a new consultation process.
And so I know one of the people that were very key to this project or the design of this was Mr. Joshua Stewart, who unfortunately passed. What impact is that having, or is it going to have any impact on just the future of making this thing happen?
Well, condolences again to the family of Joshua Stewart. This is the last major project he worked on, and I think at some point before he died, he had given up every other project he was working on to focus exclusively on this Scarborough project. And it's unfortunate when I heard of his passing. But thankfully, the major part of the work had come to an end, and the consultants putting together the final aspects of the presentation. And it's sad days for Josh, but we continue to move forward. We have an opportunity in Tobago to build an economy that eventually will move Tobago forward, and we will continue to press on.
All right. Now, moving on to some other things within the space, we have some outstanding projects that are going on, and one of that has to do with that road, that connector road from Sherburne to Strawberry Local Road. where we were supposed to have like a nice bypass going on. But we know that the EMA got involved, and the EMA took the THA to court, and they got an injunction. So what's the update on that? Where are we?
Kandace, I thought we were focusing on Scarborough today, but we are hopeful that the EMA will in fact grant the CEC sometime this week or next week, and the project will continue. We feel and we felt that it was maybe legal but not right for the EMA to take out an injunction against a government project. But that's the laws that we have. That's where we are in Tobago still, and we will continue to move forward. We have been delayed. We saw no issues with the project as it was, and we had always intended to go forward, and we will go forward. We'll be delayed, but we will still go forward. We in Tobago have to understand where we are and how we arrive at where we are. The Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago has always been making laws to hinder the development of Tobago. We remember when the first THA Act was passed in the Parliament, that they only had one secretary in the Act for 20 years. And Mr. Robinson, then in his wisdom, appointed secretaries contrary to the law and paid them supposedly contrary to the law. And then the Parliament, 16 years after, decided that they would now include secretaries in the act that will govern how Tobago is function. And so we have the history of the Parliament and maybe politicians in Trinidad believing that it is their right to determine for the people of Tobago what we should do, how we should do it, and when we should do it. And the population of Tobago has to consider these facts when they vote.
So, I mean, so where does that leave the THA now in terms of that road? Do you think that we would be able to get the...
No, the road will be built. The EMA will grant the CEC. They will delay, obviously. That's the political strategy behind it. But they will grant the CEC. And when they do grant the CEC, we will complete the road. We will be delayed, but the people of Tobago will benefit from a new road that should have been built since 1985. and so as they work on the airport, we believe the road will add tremendous value to the people who will travel to the airport and who use Crown Point, Canaan, Bonaccord as their homes and who go doing business in that area. And the road will alleviate a lot of the traffic and will open up a new area for development on the island.
And then what's also happening with some of the other outstanding road projects here in Tobago in terms of, because there were originally 4 major road projects mentioned at the start of your time in office that you wanted to engage on. One was completed, and that was the one in Scarborough, the Dutch Fort Connector Road in Scarborough. But what's going on with the others?
Well, as you know, the one we just spoke about in Friendship.
Yes.
In Friendship. The one at Lamy is 95+% complete. I think the contractor is going to install a bridge sometime next week at the end of Roxborough. The one through Lato Estate going into Mount Pleasant Development on that side, it appears that the contractor has abandoned the job, and there's some contractual issues to sort out there. But yeah, that's the update.
All right. Well, we're just going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue with our conversation. So please don't go anywhere.
Hey. Tobago updates. Good morning, Tobago. Wake up with Kandace and Denise. Let's go. It's a brand new morning. Rise up to a brand new dawning.
Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Viewers, we are continuing our conversations this morning with the Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development, Mr. Trevor James, as we discuss some of the things that are happening in Tobago, particularly what's going to be happening in Scarborough. So let's turn our focus to the Scarborough Redevelopment project, especially where certain things like the port is concerned. And we know at this point in time, the port, that access to Trinidad is quite heavy on our minds here at Tobago with what's been going on with the Cabo Star and so on. So what are some of the plans that we have to actually expand that space? Because right now we could only really accommodate 2 vessels in there at a time.
Kandace, when the TPP launched a few Sundays ago, I relayed a story, one of my stories of my first or second trip to Trinidad as a young guy below 10, I think, at the time. And Tobago is still there 50 years hence. We are still dependent on a vessel between the islands to get goods and services into Tobago. The Cabo Star issue that we are now grappling with, which will crash the Tobago economy, is just an example of an island being managed from outside that has been abandoned. We have structured a country. The Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago has structured a country where one part of the country is dependent completely on the other part. If the lifeline bursts, if the port in Port of Spain gets damaged, if there's a storm in Port of Spain and it gets flooded out, Tobago suffers. Everything that we import comes through the port of Spain or Point Lisas to be transshipped to Tobago. And we have to ask ourselves in Tobago, why is that? Is that necessary today in 2023? Couldn't we import directly to Tobago? Why can't we do that? And one of the problems the development plan was trying to solve is that problem. How do we bring significant numbers of a transient population into Tobago to help our economy? All the islands around us, from Jamaica down to Grenada to Curacao, are dependent on transient population from outside to bolster and boost their economy, their economic demand for goods and services on the islands. Tobago has been left out of that simply because we've not had the vision. The government and the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago has not had the vision to understand that if we develop Tobago and Tobago functions quasi-independently, then it benefits the entire economy of Trinidad and Tobago. And they have just not acted in our favor. And so the project in itself is one of the major solutions to that problem. And the people of Tobago, in my humble view, must buy into the vision that we have. Because without it, we are going to fail. The Cabo Star is down. The information I have is that Lloyd's of London has pulled their insurance, ISO has pulled their certificate, and to get back those 2 documents, it means that boat has to be in pristine condition. This is a boat that has 4 38-year-old engines. This is an old boat. And we have a prime minister that came into office, and we remember when the previous boat was in place and they said they couldn't renew the contract and all of that, and we were bringing goods on barges to Tobago. People forget that. A lot of people had to repair their cars for saltwater damage because of that. And we still can't have a redundant boat. You have structured a country where Tobago is dependent on imports from Trinidad. And you can't have a redundant boat. What kind of planning is that? You know, so I think Tobagoans on the whole are fed up.
Yeah.
Certainly I am fed up. And we need to take our development into our own hands. We need to plan it for ourselves, and we need to push as hard as we can to make sure that we are pushing the direction that Tobago needs to go. And we hope that those in the parliament, the 39 in the parliament who wish for us to come and beg them to vote for this and vote for that in the parliament, we wish that they would understand that as part of this country called Trinidad and Tobago, that we are equals.
Now, as it relates to the actual development of the port itself, because we know that the plan was heavily focused on making sure that we can handle the increased passenger from our domestic ferries or inter-island ferries, as well as cruise ship passengers. So I want you to expand a little bit on, what came out of the report as to what we can do here in Tobago.
Well, the researchers and the consultants looked at various ports in the region going up from Curacao to Mexico. And what they found was that there are a series of multi-use ports. From Grenada, from Willemstad and down south to Kingston, we have a series of multi-use ports, meaning that we have cruise and cargo together, because we are running small economies that simply cannot afford to build out separate ports in different locations. In Antigua, cruise ports and cargo ports are adjacent to each other. St. Vincent is now rebuilding their port in Grenada. And so while during the consultation, there have been concerns about that, and there were a lot of suggestions of maybe moving the cargo port to another location. Some people had suggested Studley Park. Some people suggested leaving cargo in Scarborough and putting the cruise in Plymouth and so on. From an economic standpoint, it was more feasible to have a multi-use port. In the Bay of Scarborough itself, we have some challenges, and so the wave study of the Bay suggested that it would have been more cost effective and it would have been cheaper, given the fact that we have to build out this new infrastructure while we manage what we have now, that we will move the two major parts of the cruise terminals to the eastern side of the bay, and building out the cruise terminals, shopping areas, and so on in that area, while we continue to use this area. And we will put the cargo port, the cargo pier, behind what we call the Esplanade on this side of the bay.
So basically, if I understand it correctly, the cruise would be moved more towards the Esplanade?
The cruise will be moved more towards the east.
Okay. And
we're going to reclaim a piece of land which will be below the police station and Bidley Beef place around it back there. And we'll put the cargo on this side. And so we found a way in concept to ensure that the full bay could be utilized, and the city of Scarborough can benefit from a major influx of people, and Tobago could benefit. Now, one of the other issues that we need to contend with, of course, is the road infrastructure in and around Scarborough.
Right.
And that too has become a major part of the report. We have a series of new roads, a series of developments to support what we see will be an increased population usage in Scarborough. We have the car park, the transportation hub, the proposal for a new hotel, residential area, a re-upgrade of the Botanics Gardens area, and essentially that will become our phase one of the project. The public may or may not know that the Division of Infrastructure went out with a request for proposals for interest in PPP projects in a multi-sectoral approach in Tobago. And out of that, we've received 8 proposals for various areas. Two proponents who've presented an intent to finance and build the city of Scarborough as we've designed it. We have a major one for Friendship Estate. We've had local developers putting in requests to build a major tourism facility in Culloden Estate. And so the division is now evaluating these interests and seeing how we can move forward. And we believe that hopefully before the end of this month, we'll announce an intent to move forward with the city of Scarborough, one of the developers.
Now, what would be one of the first moves? Is it still going to be the put in some of the lines, the electrical lines and so on, the utility poles,
Underground.
utility facilities? Would that go underground? Would that be one of the first moves, or has that project been pushed back for a little bit more?
No, we held back our hands on that because we weren't sure of what the final road infrastructure design would be. And that will become part of the phase one of the project. And instead of the division executing that separately, um, and, and, and maybe impacting what the final design could be, we decided after the fact to wait. We think that was a better decision, and the road infrastructure will become part of the whole project, and will be phased in a way to ensure that the intended goals are being achieved, and the people can still use the existing roads in Scarborough and the existing port facilities. And so we hope that when we decide to sign off on this developer, that a major part of the discussions pre-signing will of course be the phase-in, the financial model that we would use for payback and all of that will be discussed up front, and then we will present that to the people.
And so when can we see the first parts of that project being implemented?
We are hopeful. We see the Ministry of Works attempting to extend the jetty, the guide jetty in Scarborough. We have concerns, and it is tantamount to a big sibling seemingly wanting to prevent the younger sibling from moving out from downstairs, the family house, and trying to put stumbling blocks in the way.
Is it that the THA was not consulted about the extension of that jetty?
Absolutely not. We were not consulted, and so we have some hurdles to jump over, no doubt. And the thing about Tobago, though, is that we have been accustomed to not getting things easy. In this union, we've been struggling and fighting every step of the way, and those in Trinidad seem intent on continuing that struggle. And so we took a decision at the EC yesterday that the CS will reach out to the Ministry of Works, the Prime Minister, whatever the process is, to begin the discussions on the port, and we'll see where that goes. We are hopeful, however, that come January we will be turning south.
And as you mentioned, those discussions about the port, I just want to go back a little bit again. How much capacity are you hoping to establish at the port when this is complete?
In terms of cruise passengers, we're hoping to get to 1 million, but the projections I've seen in the report seem to think that in the first year after completion, we could get to 250,000 passengers, given the capacity we would have. But this is not a project in isolation, so the Secretary for Tourism will attend these cruise conferences, and we begin a more aggressive marketing of the project. Once we sign off with a developer, we would begin a more international marketing of the project to ensure that the cruise liners are aware of the new facility coming on stream. And Kandace, being in the fortunate position of coming last, we have the opportunity to build out something in Tobago that is different from around the region. The technology that we could now have in Tobago would not exist in anywhere else in the region. And that will be one of our drawing cards. The geographical location is a major drawing card. Several liners have been trying to find a port in Southern Caribbean to use as a home port. Tobago will in fact benefit from that kind of interest.
So there will be facilities to make Tobago a home port for cruise lines if they wish?
Absolutely. That's the end goal that we have. Because that is what will build the other aspects of the economy, the agricultural sector, the services sector, the inter-island connections. You could imagine that if Royal Caribbean had Scarborough is a home port, and 5,000 passengers had to fly into Crown Point to take up a cruise. What that will do for the hotels in Tobago, what that will do for the airport. We begin to ask ourselves whether what is being built in Crown Point will be able to satisfy the demand that we expect to have in a few years. That's one of the things, you know, I've complained about. What they're building now, apart from the building of the terminal building itself, the capacity now is exactly what is in Western Crown Point. They're duplicating it. Same 2 or 3 wide bodies, same 4 AR-40s. That's the capacity. And so we have to get more involved in the development, and we have to, as to begin, we have to take charge of this island that we have, because the history that I have suggests that when we leave it to those in Port of Spain, what they do is build things that constrain us and essentially, in the local parlance, keep us in our place. And we have to become more manly in how we represent Tobago and Tobagonians as a whole and as a group, whether those who live here or those who are the diaspora in Trinidad and abroad. We no doubt have to come together to put pressure, given the political system we have today, to put pressure on the parliament to act in Tobago's best interest. And we don't think that that is being done, and that has ever been done.
Now, when it comes to the feasibility studies, because I know you mentioned that there were studies with the wavelength, just the patterns, the currents, and all of those things were part of the feasibility studies that formed the basis for this report. What are the environmental concerns that were raised for the parts of the project that talk about reclaiming the sea in some areas, you know, building out some infrastructure into the sea, especially in light of all the other problems that we're seeing on our coast lately?
Well, in the Bay of Scarborough itself, the major environmental concern had to do with the wrecks that are in the bay. The concept design was built around areas where the wrecks are.
Oh.
We have incorporated part of the intent is to incorporate the use of moving the wreckage from where it is and placing them in another area of the bay and creating a whole dive industry around it. As you know, where the wrecks are now, 2 or 3 rivers come into the bay and the water there is not good for diving. So we're going to hopefully move the wrecks, pick them out, and then, of course, resink them further west, where the water should be a little cleaner, and we'll create a whole dive industry around that. So that's one of the things. The other issues, of course, has to do with dog reef and the impact that has for the protection of flooding in Scarborough. And so the engineers and the designers are going to put something in place. For the most part, when we move the cruise terminals to the east, we've reduced the need for a new channel. A new channel would, of course, meant that we'd have to blast away part of the coral of dog reef. So the designers took that into account. And even staying in this area would have meant building a massive breakwater as well, east and west, in order to protect the bay. So the movement to the east with the terminals, with the piers, has moved us away from that cost and trials of dealing with all of these issues there. So I think we have had a comprehensive report that led to this new concept. People of Tobago too have to understand that this will be a design, build, operate, maybe transfer contract, essentially a full PPP project. And so the onus is on the contractor, will be on the contractor to come up with a design that works. So we've presented the concept to give them a starting point, which is what governments do. And they would come in, they would do their own due diligence, obviously. And we're talking spending large volumes of money here, because they will have to ensure that they can recoup their monies from the operation of the facilities. And so we expect that they would do their own feasibility as well, a more in-depth feasibility, which may or may not affect the design concept that we have. But we are open for those kinds of discussions moving forward.
Now, I mean, when you look at the designs and everything, it's very elaborate and it's going to make Scarborough look very beautiful. But what about some of the other little things on the ground that does affect our day-to-day lives in terms of water runoff and so on? Because you spoke about the river. There are two rivers that run into the Scarborough Bay, and it comes with a lot of silt and pollution and so on. But what are we doing to ensure that our runoff, because smells that sometimes hit you in Scarborough is not so pretty, and it's not something that we're accustomed to in Tobago. You know, we didn't have those things before. But how are we going to make sure that, you know, just our drainage, our sewage, all of that is being taken care of with this new redevelopment project?
All of those things will be considered. I think just as an explanation, Crooks River and I don't remember the name of the other one now. The one here.
Oh yes.
The Crooks River comes from two areas, from Sergeant Kane and from the SDA Church in the back there. The plan is to run that river along the pathway to where the existing breakwater is, and build a catchment area there, purify it in some way so that the color changes and all of that. And we have that as a big water feature in the city. It will mean, of course, that we have to put some filtration systems upstream, instead of say upriver, because they're not really rivers. Upstream.
Yeah, upstream, yes.
To trap debris and to make sure the water is gradually becoming of a better quality as we try to pond it. So there are engineering plans in place for the water control in the city, for drainage
And even
in the city.
ensuring that, I mean, the runoff that comes from the buildings and so on.
Yeah. All of those are part of the plan. We are hoping to have a new and modern city, and so all of that will be considered as the company develops the plan fully for construction.
And then one thing I noticed about the plan as well is the emphasis on being environmentally friendly and using green technologies as part of the build out in terms of like solar lights and whatnot. So I wanted to speak on that a little bit more.
Well, you know, we came into office with the tagline green, clean, green, and serene, I think.
Clean, green, safe, and serene.
Clean, green, safe, and serene. And there's something that we've bought into. We have an island that where major acreages have been designated as forest reserve. We have flora, we have fauna, we have waterfalls, we have rivers, we have, you know, Tobago is the ideal island for tourists to come and relax and enjoy. And we want to continue to sell the island as that. And so wherever we can build green buildings, LEED certified buildings in the city, that's what we will do. Whatever new technologies we can bring to ensure that the city works in a clean way, those we will incorporate. And so we believe that at the division, at the level of the administration, we're excited for what we think will come. And the discussions, of course, of how we move the island forward, it's going to be a very exciting time in the next 6-8 months or so.
So can we get some specifics as to, you know, what are some of those visions for the plan? Like what's in the plan in terms of those incorporated, how are we going to incorporate in those green technologies and make sure that, you know, we can contribute to the marketing of Tobago as this environmentally safe destination? Well,
I don't want to preempt what the intended proponent would come up with, but clearly power will be one of them. We have a LNG plant down the road, so certainly we would hope that the power from there will be brought to Scarborough in some way to power the ships that come in to the harbor. In terms of the LEED certification, maybe a policy statement from the THA that talks about new buildings being LEED certified. That would help, excuse me, the kind of buildings that will be built. In terms of parking, all of those things can be mechanized in a green way. And so we are hopeful and we're excited for the discussion that will come. But for me to say this will be incorporated, that will be incorporated, as of now, is not something that I want to do.
Right. And of course, as a part, you mentioned, moving the relics as well. But I know in the plan, there's also a part for like museums
Yeah.
and so on, so that we can actually see the wreckages and so on, and to perhaps revive that Rockley Vale project that was started several years ago.
Well, from we had meetings with the professor that came down from the States. I was involved in that project.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from what I can gather, um, most of the ships there have been deteriorated significantly.
Yes.
And we've had a discussion of whether we can build out a Scarborough museum that where we 3D print some of the artifacts on a smaller scale and put it into that museum. That's one of the discussions we've had, and we will see how that goes. But we believe that may attract a different kind of tourist to Tobago, and so we want to be as all inclusive as we can be, and so we'll wait to see how that pans out. But further discussions, of course, will take place with that group. But no doubt, there are some benefits to be derived from building out a museum such as that. I know the one in Trinidad has a virtual museum, but if you can build a museum that has captured the wrecks in the bay, 3D printed, that would be a first in the region, I believe. There's also the idea of recreating the war in the bay and making it into a movie and having it being shown at some frequency in the museum, at the museum as well. So those things are discussions that we've had preliminary discussions on, and we'll see how it goes and what can be included and how cost effective it is.
Certainly. And as you mentioned,
how we pay for it.
You're actually preempted my next question, and this really has to do with cost, because this is a major project that will be done in phases, and not all of it will not be done at the same time, and so on. And it might even take a little while to get started based on how large or how detailed the project is in itself. But I know you just came back from New York, where you were meeting with some of the diaspora across there and hoping to engage them into seeing how they can partner with the THA towards financing. So I want to talk to you. I want you to talk a little bit about that, getting that financing going for projects like this.
So this is a major investment. We are now at the stage where we are looking at various financial models of how we bring on a contractor, developer, and to decide on what the payback model really is. We're looking at all the laws of Trinidad and Tobago to see how that can work. But we believe that the revenue generating arms of the project will certainly be able to pay for the project in the medium term. And that's what the data suggests so far. When we come to the place where we've decided on one of the developers, we would sit down with them and discuss the various financial models. But no doubt, the cruise terminal, the cargo terminal, the car park, the transportation hub, those are the four revenue generating arms of the project. And we are hopeful that those arms will raise enough revenue to pay back for this project on its own. And so the initial data we have suggests that will be the case, and that the THA will collect part of the royalties from those revenue as well. And so we think we are in a good place, and we will present all that hopefully to the public later this year. We are also at this time working on making the submissions to the relevant authorities regarding the EIA and the CEC and so on. And those things are in the works, and we hope that we'll find favor with the EMA.
Well,
that's the best way I could say it.
Yeah, we're gonna leave that one up to the EME. I want to touch a little bit on two things that you just mentioned there. Well, actually, you mentioned it a little bit throughout, and that has to do with the transportation side of things, making a transportation hub as well as increased parking in Scarborough, which both issues that are a major concern. Can you give us an idea of what does the plan speak to in terms as to how are we changing the way we treat for transportation in Tobago, especially where taxis and PH drivers are concerned? Are we going to have one centralized area where people go get their cars, so to speak, or what's going to happen?
Well, what we have now is a series of small car parks, taxi
Unofficial.
areas, people standing on the road on garden side to go to country along the whole stretch, taxis, PH drivers pulling aside, blocking off part of the road. We don't have a planned city. And so the idea behind the transportation hub is to bring all of those people into one area and find a way to move them out as quickly as possible. That would mean, of course, fixing the road infrastructure in and out of that area. So essentially that's the plan. Again, it's an architectural concept we have. The architect still has to collect the data, the population data, the traveling data to see what's the best design for that. That was not one of the deliverables of the feasibility. That detail, of course, but that study will be done, and I'm sure that the eventual design will meet the needs of a growing population in Tobago. We are building this that expects an increased population in Tobago, and that will be considered, of course, in the design. But I know from what I've seen, there are a series of roads that will complement the development. So off my head, we are going to widen the down side of Dodge Fort. We put in some flash amber lights there, and so that drivers can go now straight over onto Garden Side by Tiantec. That's a project that will be done hopefully in fiscal 24. We're also looking at connecting that road by the car park, by the Garden Side car park, coming across through where NIB was, onto Wilson Road as well. And so we are hopeful that that can be done in fiscal 24 as well.
All right, there's quite a lot of good information. And viewers, if you want to know more about this Scarborough redevelopment project, you need to check the report out on the division's website. It's all there.
THA website.
Oh, the THA website, sorry. And a simple Google search, you will find it. Scarborough Urban Redevelopment Project. It's on tha.gov.tt/Scarborough Urban Redevelopment Project. It's a very hefty document. It's very detailed. This is the feasibility study, and very soon you, the public, will be able to come forward and make your contributions and make
another series of consultations.
Yes, to make a comments and evaluate what works, say what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, and I think we are going to launch a website this month as well, and I'm sure the communication team will have a way where people can send their comments before we actually go to the consultations.
Can they send the comments now?
Well, I'm hoping that will be done after we launch our website.
Okay.
There will be a link for that to happen. I don't think it's available just yet, but no doubt this will be an ongoing communication with the people of Tobago, and we'll have a dedicated port for people to put their comments on what they think the city should include, what the design should include, what we should cater for, what problems we should solve, and so on and so forth. And that pool of information will be transmitted to the developer to be incorporated into the design once, of course, it's economically feasible.
All right, well, thank you so much, Mr. James, for being on with us and for sharing all these great ideas and these plans that are hopefully to come. So, all right, viewers.
Thank you, Kandace. It's always good to be in Tobago Updates.
All the time. So, viewers, thank you for being here with us, and I just hope you have a safe and wonderful day, and we will see you again tomorrow.
Tobago updates.